Okay, and we're live. We're live, guys. Welcome to another episode of Good Morning Liberty. My name is Michael Bolden. We're here from the 10th Amendment Center. We're broadcasting as of this point every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It is 9:30 a.m. Pacific time here in downtown Los Angeles. So good morning or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be watching or when you're watching. Thank you so much for being here with me. I'm really grateful for you tuning in. So today I want to cover a couple of topics that I think are pretty hot on people's minds. Of course, the big social media purge that we've been watching, whether you want to talk about Alex Jones, or we also see Twitter accounts suspended from people like Peter Van Buren, Scott Horton, or Daniel L. McAdams, at Daniel L. McAdams from the Ron Paul Institute. So we're going to talk about that purge and get a couple of interesting perspectives from people that I've been reading on this, share a few of my own thoughts. And then I also want to talk about the ramp up, the new sanctions being enforced on Iran. I've got an interesting report and hopefully some thoughts on that as well. Of course, if you like what we're talking about here or you find it interesting or useful, make sure to smash the likes, hitting that like button whether you're watching live or if you're watching later from the archives. It does a huge amount to tell YouTube to share this video with other people in the suggested videos section. So please do that. And of course, the same goes for leaving comments. I'd like to hear your thoughts on what we're talking about. And of course, if you've got ideas on things that you do want us to cover in the future, we've had a number of good ideas, some things that I've looked at, some things that are definitely a little over my head or outside of my realm, but please keep leaving your thoughts. And if I see similar things come up over and over again that I don't know about, maybe I'll do a little bit more research. It'll be more likely for me to do a little bit more research and look into them. So let's get into the first topic of the day, the social media purge. I basically want to share with you some thoughts here first from my friend, and I would say someone I really look up to, Jeff Deist over at the Mises Institute. And he wrote a column, basically the position from Mises on what's going on here. And rather than going into all the details of who's being banned and taken down on one side or the other, Jeff has some interesting thoughts here on this. And he says, yes, tech companies are private organizations with shareholders. Yes, nobody has a right to a platform or a microphone or an audience. Yes, nobody in America is being put in jail or fined by government for speech yet. I mean, maybe there's some argument against that. But yeah, but he's saying that they don't advocate, and I don't either, regulation of social media or technology companies under common carrier utility theories or some tenuous expansion of public accommodation laws. This, in essence, is asking for more government to solve the problem here. But he also points out that the unholy nexus of state and corporate power is at the core of the libertarian critique. Big tech, and this is the important reminder we posted over on Twitter and Facebook this morning, part of this as a quote in a meme from Jeff. He says, big tech is deeply involved with government at many levels, from data collection to spying to developing weapons and AI to providing cloud space to noxious federal agencies. Tech companies derive their economic, social, and cultural power not only from their competence in the marketplace, but increasingly from their connection to the state as well. So Jeff, of course, the message, the very consistent message over at the Mises Institute is that, hey, we're not calling for more government power to solve this problem. We're not calling for more government interference in the marketplace, but we're also reminding people that these supposed, we don't have a free market, so these supposed free market actors, these private businesses or the publicly traded, whatever they may be, they're in bed with the people that People Want More Liberty are actually the organization that we're opposing. That is the government, and they're helping them. In many ways, they act as an arm, especially when it comes to surveillance. You can talk not just about surveillance companies, but AT&T, their buildings all around. They are basically the clearinghouse for collecting data on behalf of the NSA. So a lot of these companies, and this is a corporatist, mercantilist, some people say fascist type of a system where you have the partnership of state and corporate power working together to violate your rights. And we know that a private organization saying that you can't do speech on their platform is not a violation of the First Amendment. But it is a dangerous thing that's happening, according to what Jeff has to say. Now, the other side of the political spectrum, if you use the normal views, Glenn Greenwald, who is certainly no libertarian, he's very good sometimes on civil liberties. He had this tweet yesterday, and I thought it was really insightful. So I read this article from his website, The Intercept, that went along with it. And Glenn says, anyone gullible, obsequious, and subservient enough to trust Facebook to benevolently and fairly determine what is hate speech should go to the West Bank and Gaza and talk to all the Palestinians banned from Facebook at the request of the Israeli government. I didn't know this was happening. And so I clicked through and I read it. And there's this article over that Glenn wrote last December at the end of the year of 2017 over at The Intercept. And it says, Facebook says it's deleting accounts at the discretion of the U.S. and Israeli governments. And I think this is some interesting insight to pay attention to. Let's look at a few of the key points here that Glenn makes. In September of last year, we noted, so that would have been in 2016, we noted that Facebook representatives were meeting with the Israeli government to determine which Facebook accounts of Palestinians should be deleted on the ground that they constituted incitement. So from there, a number of people were removed, and he reports, indeed, Israeli officials have been publicly boasting about how obedient Facebook is when it comes to Israeli censorship orders. So we can actually substitute the word government for Israeli. So in this particular situation, government told Facebook you had to turn off accounts for these people. They were inciting. Now, certainly the founders were inciting. Can you imagine if it was modern times today and you had someone like George Washington or Patrick Henry, let's say Patrick Henry saying, give me liberty or give me death, or Thomas Paine writing that, this is the time. That would be inciting violence against the current government. They would all have been banned. Instead, they published on their own. A lot of publishers didn't want to run what they had to say, but there certainly were friendly ones that wanted to push out their message. Common Sense, actually, I believe at the time, was the most widely published pamphlet in American history, and maybe for many years after that. So this type of thing, this type of partnership, when you see government talking to a social media or a company, a publisher, and saying, you've got to stop allowing these particular voices, because that's really what it gets down to. These are publishers. A lot of people want to call them open forums or public utilities, and like Jeff Deist, I don't want government to start treating it under all kinds of regulated public commons types of laws. But certainly we have to recognize that these are publishers. And when government starts talking to publishers and starts pressuring them to allow or disallow certain viewpoints, then that leads to some pretty dangerous results. And certainly we know with the hearings of Zuckerberg and others in front of Congress, or in front of a committee, I believe, earlier this year and last year about Russian meddling. This is the excuse to get them in front of there. I don't think many of the Jack Dorsey or Zuckerberg or others, I don't think many of them have political views that are anywhere close to mine or probably yours. So there's certainly the viewpoint that these guys are not the good guys. They don't align with us. But in general, in comparison to when it was CBS, NBC, ABC, and then eventually Fox, compared to the era of just big media-run television, we do still have an opportunity to share our thoughts. I'm talking with you today, and we certainly can share some viewpoints. I know that they don't like this. I think the establishment does not like this, and a lot of this is almost like a test case to see how much the people will tolerate, how much pressure government can put on these businesses and say, you know, we're working together on all this surveillance stuff. Let's make some public pressure and make you look bad. And I mean, I don't know who's the lead bad guy in these things, but this is how I kind of see it. And especially now looking at this article over at The Intercept too, that Israeli officials specifically told Facebook, remove these accounts. Now, you don't have to agree with those accounts or not, but certainly this was under a government suggestion. Hey, Pete Dahlin is tuned in. Pete, I haven't talked to you in ages. Good to see you. Of course, thanks for everybody who watches. A reminder, leave some comments and some thoughts on these views here. But getting back to this article here from The Intercept, let me scroll down to the next section that I highlighted. It's not just the Israeli government. Greenwald also noted, hey, Facebook now seems to be explicitly admitting that it also intends to follow the censorship orders of the U.S. government. Earlier this week, that would have been late in December of 2017, the company deleted the Facebook and Instagram accounts of Ramzan Kadyrov, the repressive, brutal, and authoritarian leader of the Chechen Republic, who had 4 million followers on those two accounts. And so Greenwald points out that this guy is a pretty bad dude. He's awful. He's got total kind of control. He does all kinds of human rights violations, imprisonment, torture, etc., killing of dissidents. But he says none of that dilutes how disturbing and dangerous Facebook's rationale for its deletion of his accounts is. They didn't delete the account because the guy's a mass murderer and a tyrant. They deleted it, quote, and this is what the spokesman said, their accounts were deactivated because he has just been added to a U.S. sanctions list and that the company was legally obligated to act. Now let's keep this in mind in relationship to the recently revealed TSA Quiet Skies program. And if you haven't followed this, Jim Bovard, who's a longtime friend of the 10th Amendment Center, a great writer on liberty, and especially on kind of stalker state surveillance issues, had a column in the USA Today recently. It was broken originally in the Boston Globe about how the TSA, since about 2010, has been using pretty broad kind of criteria to determine who might be a threat when they come through. We've all kind of heard that story. So if you look a little bit nervous, or if you're talking too much in line, if you're a little shifty, you've got a dark, heavy stare, all kinds of normal things. Now, mind you, I'm nervous when I go to the airport all the time because they punch me when they do a search when I don't want to go through the scanner, which is virtually every single time, and they're very aggressive, so I'm always nervous. But they put you on this list that you don't know about, and they've actually been using federal marshals to track your travel behavior, and if for some people, and from what I read, it's about 30 to 40 people per day for now, they will buy tickets, federal marshals will buy tickets for future flights that someone gets on the list for acting weird, and they'll board those flights and stalk them. I mean, this is stalker state writ large. Now, keep that in mind. Again, that is going on. The TSA, the way people are being put on terrorist watch lists and can't get off. No fly, no buy on the right to keep and bear arms. Government has been basically testing the waters, pushing and pushing and pushing on how they're going to add people to lists and what effect it will have. If you have a medical marijuana card, they say that you can't defend your family, your home, your property, yourself. You lose your right to keep and bear arms because you're violating a federal law on a Schedule I substance. Probably the same for CBD, which is also a Schedule 1 substance, no matter what a lot of other people may think about this. So this is a very dangerous precedent. They create these watch lists. They use really nefarious viewpoints to say if you're acting strange while traveling, you could be a risk. You could be a terrorist risk. And then once you're on that list, what can happen? Well, certainly a guy like Kadyrov is a horrible dude. And I think they test these types of things out on really easy targets. So Kadyrov, okay, no one is going to defend the mass murderer. No one is going to defend him. I guess, except maybe, I don't think Greenwald really defended him. I think he opposed the dangerous precedent that Facebook is setting by following government orders on these types of things. So if Facebook can ban this person, can a future administration or the current one, can the government or the deep state itself start saying that other people belong on these types of dangerous lists, and then the company is legally obligated to act? That's the concern. Some people would say that I'm fear-mongering. I think that is a legitimate concern. We see it ramping up over and over again. Now, I think Alex Jones, also fits into one of these easier targets. A lot of the general public really can't stand the guy. I mean, whether you think he's a saint, a sinner, he's amazing, he's horrible, he's a journalist or a provocateur, a liar or a truth teller, it doesn't matter. The fact is, a lot of people, he creates a lot of controversy, maybe because he reports on controversial things, maybe he's over the top on some things. The fact of the matter is a lot of people don't like him. So if you go after someone who in the general public people don't like and you shut them down, you are almost testing the waters to see how much power you can get to shut them down. Now, I don't know if this was some coordinated effort by social media giants and that, like, some Republicans in Congress are now saying that they should start treating social media like a public utility. In other words, more government. So is that the big setup against us, that it's going to be more government coming from the right? Now they're going to start supporting net neutrality more and more. They're going to say government should come in and protect us from these evil corporations? Or is it the other way around? It's hard to tell where this is going to go. Either way, I think it's certainly kind of testing the water, moving the goalposts and seeing how far that they can get, whether the originators are the social media tech giants, the big tech, or if it's pressure from government, or if it's just kind of a coordinated quid pro quo. They work with each other. There's a lot of contracts going back and forth to companies like, for example, Google gets all kinds of military contracts now for research, AI, their drone warfare, and things like that. And I know they're supposedly backing off on some of this, but it's hard to tell where it's going. I do know that cutting people off like this, putting them, I think Jones called it an economic ghetto. I don't know if that's the right phrase for it, and he's getting panned. Some people laugh at it. But in a way, the less that people can reach, the less voice that you have, the less effect that you can have. And if you can do it to Jones, why can't they do it to somebody else? I think it's a slippery slope that people should be completely concerned about. So just one quick further note that Greenwald says here. He says, what this means is obvious. The U.S. government, meaning at the moment, the Trump administration, has the unilateral and unchecked power to force the removal of anyone it wants from Facebook and Instagram by simply including them on a sanctions list. Does anyone think this is a good outcome? Of course, the readership at The Intercept tends to be more on the left, the more progressive, not necessarily the mainstream Hillary Clinton liberal type left, but probably the further left, Bernie Sanders towards Green Party left. That reads that as probably the bulk of the readership and the messaging there. So they're, of course, putting it in a perspective of Donald Trump having this power. But anyone should be concerned. So if you're a Donald Trump supporter, you wouldn't want this type of power in the hands of the federal government, even with Trump, and even if Trump does only what you want with it, because the next person is unlikely to be your guy. That's the old Harry Brown saying, give government the power to do something you like. You're also giving power to the next person to do exactly the opposite. Does anyone trust the Trump administration? And I like that he says this, or any other government to compel social media platforms to delete and block anyone it wants to be silenced. And I think that's really the message. You don't want government to have this power. Social media, and I was part of Jeff Deist's article was talking about how Mises Institute is, and Mises.org is a relatively older platform, at least when it comes to the liberty movement more broadly. And they were talking about how, even if the Mises Institute was next, if they got shut off of social media, whether it be podcasting platforms, iTunes, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever, he pointed out that a lot of the traffic that goes to Mises actually is from all over the place. Direct visits, email, Google searches, etc. And it really, social media, although they would take a hit, it's about 20% of their traffic. It's still only 20%. And a lot of newer websites, it's a vast majority is coming from social media. So I did some quick research here for 10th Amendment Center to see, because I know that we have done very well, for example, on Facebook. We've reached a lot of people there, especially for the size of the organization. And I know years ago, we had a lot of traffic from social media. It was a pretty high percentage. And starting around 2015, it really started going down, and it was down to about 20%. 2015, 2016, we're getting about 20%. Not just Facebook, but we're talking about Facebook, Reddit, Twitter, YouTube, Google+, whatever, StumbleUpon, which I don't think is really active anymore. But all these sites were driving about 20%. It was down to about 20%. I think at some point it was probably higher than that. I'll have to look. But currently, at least for 2018, it's somewhere between 9 and 10% of our traffic. Our overall traffic, unfortunately, because the amount of visits to the website has gone way down as far as the social media referrals, because they don't like voices like ours, independent voices getting out there, but certainly the percentage. So we are not reliant on social media to get our message out there. I wouldn't want us to see any less traffic, certainly. But if they cut us off here at 10th Amendment Center, we'd certainly survive. We'd find other ways to get our message out and probably make up for that other 10%. Making up for 10% is a much easier thing than trying to make up for 20, 30, 40% or more. So on to the next story that I wanted to cover here. Comes from antiwar.com. It's another article. Jason Ditz does all kinds of great short news articles covering day-to-day events in foreign policy. And this one is the U.S. vows aggressive enforcement as Iran sanctions are reimposed. And he says the reimposition of U.S. nuclear sanctions on Iran began on Monday, and they're trying to ban the trade of goods with the country of Iran. And he notes that the goal of U.S. sanctions is to force the rest of the world to stop trading with Iran. And I just have actually one kind of quick thought on this. It really is basically gun control. It's gun control and prohibition. And I can't understand how someone who opposes, and a lot of people seem to support sanctions on other countries, gun control on other countries, are totally opposed to gun control and recognize that gun control doesn't work. When you use gun control, only the bad guys get guns. People who recognize that, at least on individuals, don't recognize this in foreign policy. George McClellan comments, two good comments. Yeah, of course, the pleasure police, absolutely. And George, thank you. Of course, the website is the backup. Certainly, and I've thought about this as well when it comes to a purge. Of course, we need to strengthen our just direct visits to 10thamendmentcenter.com. And in fact, I'm in the middle of a long time full kind of update renovation of that site. It really is in need of an update about 3 years ago, actually. So that almost certainly will be done by the end of this summer. We're going to improve the quality, make it easier for people to find content, whether video or use searches or categories on specific issues, and take action. So that's incredibly important. But I think this whole terms of service game that the social media giants use, and we can see how other service providers kicked Alex Jones off. MailChimp is an email service provider, very well known. They don't kick almost anybody off unless you're just fully spamming. And we've been using MailChimp for years. But they all have this type of term of service. So the website hosting that we use at WP Engine probably has something like that as well. So if they wanted to target us, they'd probably find a way to kick us off. But I think that also, again, the market actually would recognize this, and there will be providers that will allow you to host your website. I know Scott Horton, Jared LaBelle, and others at the Libertarian Institute, I believe they host it in-house. I don't have that kind of tech skill, and we don't have the money to be able to hire people who do. But in the future, that may be something that's important. I've also kind of started looking at some blockchain-based social sites, DTube, DLive, Steemit, and I'm not sure if they're right for us, but maybe we'll have to get on those in the near future, at least start testing it out. So back to this gun control, foreign policy gun control issue. So two big things that I think are going on here. One, it is gun control. And gun control doesn't work, and it has really bad outcomes. And two, I also think the other issue is that this is prohibition. I mean, if you're trying to ban the whole world from trading with trading with a country, one only needs to look at what happens in a prison where all drugs are banned and they're filled with illegal substances. They can't even stop in a maximum security prison drugs from getting in the prison. How are they going to stop the entire globe from trading with Iran? Don Naylor, Super Don from the Robert Scott Bell Show. That is awesome. He says the free market will step up. Absolutely, without a doubt. And I think that's the message in all of this, whether it's gun control issues, where we're talking about 3D printing for firearms, so the right to keep and bear arms, prohibition, people always find a way, and then even on this social media purge, I think there are going to be businesses that step up and provide services to get around these government partners, we'll call them. Government friends in social media who spy on us, collect all of our information, spy on us, build military weapons, basically help the empire do all the things that they do. Now, one more thing that I want to cover before we go today, our daily quote of the day, and it comes from my new friend that should have been a friend a long time ago. His name is Alex Merced. He's actually the vice chair of the Libertarian National Committee of the Libertarian Party. You can love them or hate them, but I think Alex has some really good perspective here. And his quote says, "Real hope and change isn't found in more taxation or in controlling others." And most of the solutions that we hear about all of these issues today is about controlling people. So whether it's controlling people, whether they want to trade with Persian people in Iran, it's controlling how people want to defend themselves at home or in other countries, controlling who's going to say what to who on what platform. These are the solutions that most people provide, or that most people want to talk about, most people offer. But this is not the way forward. The way forward to be more free, more prosperous, and of course more secure is in liberty. Liberty is what makes us safe, wealthy, happy, and free. And I want to thank Alex for repeating that message. This is something he talks about pretty regularly. He's a really, really great guy. So, of course, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. That's about all the time we have. I'm continuing to go into the 30 minutes of streaming rather than the 15 that I had planned on. So thank you so much for sticking around with me, watching this show for another episode of Good Morning Liberty. Thank you to everyone who has been leaving comments. Make sure to smash the likes. Help us spread the word. Share this on social media while we still can and get the word out. Help educate some new people and get them involved in our work here. If you support us, make sure to go to 10thamendmentcenter.com/members. 10thamendmentcenter.com/members for as little as $2 a month. You can join us and become part of our team, our family here at the 10th Amendment Center. And I hope you have a great day, whether it's morning, have a great morning, good afternoon, good evening. I will be back on Friday morning at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time for another episode of Good Morning Liberty. Thank you so much for watching again, and have a great day. Goodbye.